Of all the supporting characters that make up Bleach's pretty eclectic cast, I would argue that there are very few that are as instantly synonymous with the series as Kisuke Urahara. From his flippant and jokey attitude to his green and white striped hat and sandals combo, Urahara really is one of those characters that even people who haven't read Bleach can associate with the series, and he's definitely one of Kubo's best, most interesting characters. This is the first video in a brand new series I want to do on this channel, guys, where I take a single character from Bleach, whether they're a popular character or less so, and go in depth on what makes them tick. A character analysis video that looks at their relationships, their personality, their impact on the story, and their general role in Bleach, and just see what we think of the character as a whole, because I really do think that Bleach has one of the most interesting and diverse sets of characters I've ever seen in a work of fiction. So I think this would be a really interesting series for the channel, and I want you guys as a community to get involved with the creation of that as well. Let me know in the comments below which character you'd like me to do a video on next. I haven't quite decided the best way of doing this yet, whether we just tally up the votes in the comments like that, or if I pick maybe say 3 characters and then let you guys vote between those. We'll see, but for now this is the first video. It's a bit experimental, so we'll try that and we'll see how it goes. We'll see who comes out on top. Remember, guys, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button. I think our next milestone really has to be 10k. We're doing really well, and I can't say thank you enough for the support you've given me. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. It does help with the overall exposure, and hit the notification bell as well, because if you love Bleach, you're in the right place for more weekly videos just like this one. So where do you begin then with a character like Kisuke Urahara? The guy is an enigma. He is Bleach's most intelligent character, but he's also one of the most mysterious characters. He's been in the series pretty much since day one. His first appearance was in chapter 13, and at least in the canon manga, his final appearance was in chapter 666. So he really has run the gamut in terms of his appearance in the story, although his importance and his role in the story fluctuates between story arcs. Regarding his personality, Kisuke is one of the few subset of Bleach characters that kind of operates this dual personality almost, that makes them really, really unpredictable. Basically, there is this kind of layer on top which is almost like jovial, it's goofy, it's jokey, but really it masks a truly sinister nature to these characters that hides their intelligence, their deviousness, and their trickery. Other characters like this, definitely Kyoraku Shunsui, maybe Askin Naklavar, characters like that on the outside appear comical, but as soon as a switch is flipped, you know, their true nature is revealed, and they're often some of the most dangerous characters in the series. And I really truly believe that Urahara is the archetypal version of this character in Bleach. He's the progenitor of this personality for sure, and he probably does it the best out of everyone. He can be extremely goofy, but then when things have to get serious, you know, he gets that trademark shadow over his eyes because of the rim of his hat, which I think is a really nice piece of imagery for his character. Which basically it shows you everything you need to know there and then. You know, he's got the sort of silliness of the hat, but it covers his eyes. His true agenda for the longest time is not really known. There are even parts of Bleach where you're supposed to question if he's a good guy or not, which is stuff we'll get into later. But Urahara's personality is really interesting. One of my favourite things about Urahara is his questionable morality as well. This is played up in the series a number of times. It's very clear that he is willing to do whatever it takes and pay whatever the human cost is to ensure that the side of good prevails in the end. So he's one of these characters that's very much focused on the greater good, the idea of keeping the status quo intact, but it doesn't really matter what is sacrificed to get to that point. So we see a couple of really good examples of this throughout the series that I think really hammer home what Kisuke's true personality is actually like. He obviously is perfectly willing to put Rukia in potentially harm's way by completely lying to her and not telling her that the Gigai she has houses the Hogyoku, all to keep it out of Aizen's hands, because obviously Kisuke knows the truth about Aizen. He knows what's going on in the background, which again is an underlying theme with Kisuke's character in general. So he puts Rukia in harm's way there, and in the 1000-Year Blood War arc he's confronted by his former vice captain Hiyori about the fact that he let Ichigo and Yoroichi go up to the Quincy Palace early without any backup, purely to hopefully slow down the Quincy's from achieving their goal, and it doesn't matter if they die. And these are supposed to be two of Kisuke's closest friends. And when Hiyori calls him out on it, he doesn't say anything to defend himself, implying that it's true, and then he tells Yushiro Shihoin that it was all done for the sake of the Soul Society. And I think this idea of the sake of the Soul Society is really interesting. It's played up quite a bit in the final arc, and I think Kisuke is probably the embodiment of this idea. It's a mantra that permeates the Gotei 13 in general. It's that you don't live for yourself. You exist for the Gotei. You exist to defend the Gotei. You exist to defend the world, the stability, and everything that essentially the Soul King represents. And that's very much Kisuke. That turns out to be his agenda. He, on the outside, like I said, is this really kind of light-hearted guy, but he is willing to do whatever it takes to ensure the world remains stable. This is obviously puts him at odds with characters like Aizen and characters like Hiyori, which is something we'll get into when we get to Kisuke's relationships section. But just in regards to himself, he is pretty much the embodiment of this idea that you are a soldier who exists to protect the Soul Society and to protect the rest of the worlds as well. And it doesn't matter how you do that. And Kisuke, because of that, is very morally grey. And I always found that to be really, really interesting. He's one of the few characters in the series who you can probably call objectively good, but at the same time he's so devious that it kind of puts a question mark on that, and I really like that. I think a lot of his worldview stems from his time in the Omnitsukido way back in the day. We don't know an awful lot about Kisuke's history, but clearly he was brought up as a hardline soldier because, the Omnitsukido as the stealth corps, and he was also a jailer as well, remember? So he's very much... Kubo can make this guy appear as light-hearted as he wants to, but the truth of Kisuke's past is that he is an enforcer of Soul Society's laws. And that mindset is still there today. So I always found it to be really interesting. Looking at Kisuke's story overview then, and like I said, this guy is really in the story from the very beginning, almost until the very end. At the start of the story, he's very mysterious. He plays up that fantasy trope of the hero's mentor. He obviously helps out Ichigo. He teaches him about the Soul Society. He prepares him to go and fight them. He trains Ichigo quite hard and relentlessly. He, again, pushes him to almost death's door to achieve what he thinks he needs to achieve. And Kisuke, his methods clearly work. You find that you see Benihime for the first time here, and he really goes in hard on Ichigo, who, you have to remember at this point, is at the very nascent stage of his powers. He doesn't know how to do anything, but it's through Kisuke's training that he learns Getsuga Tensho, and he's able to gain the strength necessary to fight the Soul Reapers. So, at the beginning, Kisuke does basically just play the mentor role. You do obviously find out later that he tricked Rukia into having the Hogyoku, and he genuinely apologizes for that as well, which shows the humanity to him. Because despite what I said, he's not just a cold machine of the Seirete. He does have humanity. That's what makes him a good guy at the end of the day. All of his decisions are tinged with a sort of genuineness to them. That's why he does apologize to Ichigo for all the trouble he's caused everyone, and Ichigo tells him he should be apologizing to Rukia instead, and I think Kisuke says that obviously he will do that. So the main thing is to remember about Kisuke is that he is always there for everyone. It's just his own agenda technically comes first, but I always found it to be really interesting. When the Urankar arc comes around, this arc is so bloated and so long that Kisuke's relevance dips in and out. But because Aizen is using the Hogyoku, which is initially Kisuke's invention, he does still have quite a bit of relevance overall. And the start of the arc is really interesting because a lot of things are coming into play. Ishin is revealed to be a Shinigami, the Vizards arrive, and of course now, especially with the power of hindsight, that Kisuke knew all about all of these guys. And so at the start of the Urankar arc, he basically plays up the mystery quite a lot. He then obviously helps them get to Waco Mundo, very similar to his role in the Soul Society arc there, and then you don't really see him again until the Turn Back the Pendulum arc. This is probably the most fascinating part for Kisuke, and in my opinion is really the apex of his development, because the roles he plays after this kind of get toned down in importance, I think. But obviously the Turn Back the Pendulum arc deals with the origins of the Vizards, it deals with the origins of the Hogyoku and the case of Kisuke's banishment from the Soul Society, and it's all very important stuff for his character. It's here you get to see the beginnings, well, not even the beginnings, but earlier stages of the relationships he has with characters like Yoroichi and Tessai and Hiyori, and all of this kind of comes together to show a man who is a bit more vulnerable than we usually see him, but nonetheless still calculating, still 3 steps ahead of people. Like, he's already making Gigais, he's prepared for holification. You know, Aizen, the thing with Aizen is, and I really can't wait to get into their relationship later on, because there's such a dichotomy there, but Aizen is very much in the belief that he kind of knows best, he's out to kind of rise to the top, but Kisuke is undermining him every step of the way. Like, Aizen probably should never have messed with Urahara, because from the moment Aizen revealed his true nature, Kisuke was working on ways to unravel his plans, and obviously that comes out much later on in the final battle of the Arrancar arc, but here we truly get to see the earlier days of Kisuke in the Soul Society, his first few days as a captain, and it's really interesting to see him in a new position, in this position of vulnerability. It gives him a slightly more human edge. I think it really rounds out his character, which is why I think it is the apex of his development. I think after this, like I said, he becomes more of a side character than he kind of was before. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because he does get a good chance to shine here and other characters do need to be fleshed out, but I think this is definitely the big moment for him. When the final battle with Aizen rolls around in the fake Karakura Town arc, Kisuke takes ages to show up. You have to remember that the Arrancar arc was so long. When we were reading it on a weekly basis, it was a big deal for a character like Urahara to show up, because he hadn't been seen for about a year. Obviously, the 1,000 Year Blood Board is a bit different, because he's pushed to the forefront in terms of his active role in the war. In this one, he does less, but he's kind of like devising things behind the scenes to bring down Aizen with. So when he does finally join the battle, you don't get an awful lot out of him, which is a bit of a shame. You get a couple of really nice character moments between him and Aizen. Again, we'll go into that on their relationship, but you get to see Aizen's sort of sour grapes, the intellectual rivalry they have going on, and it's really fascinating to see. But obviously Kisuke fights Aizen, and you get a good idea of how strong he is, because he doesn't really fight that much prior to this. He skirmishes with Ichigo when they're training. He actually plays an active role in some of the early Arrancar invasions. You know, he fights Yami, he has a tussle with Wonder Weiss, all this sort of thing we'll talk about in his fighting section, but it's here against Aizen that he kind of lets loose properly for the first time. You see Benihime in action when he uses Shibari Benihime and Juzu Tsunagi and stuff like that to really kind of fight Aizen. And then eventually, of course, it's revealed that Ichigo using Mugetsu was all part of the plan, and Kisuke, like I said, has been planning to defeat Aizen for some time, because Aizen thinks he knows best, but he doesn't. Kisuke understands the Hogyoku probably even better than Aizen does at the end of the day, and he uses that against him, and Aizen is obviously defeated. So Kisuke continues that mentoring role with Ichigo. I would say up until this moment, I think this is where Ichigo kind of breaks away from Kisuke. Obviously, Ichigo loses his powers here, and then Kisuke doesn't really have that much to do with him for a little while, which we'll get into, because the Lost Agent arc is weird. It is weird. In fact, we may as well talk about it now, because that is what comes up next. So the Lost Agent arc is kind of frustrating. This is the arc where you're supposed to think that Kisuke is a villain, because Ichigo has lost all his powers, he thinks the whole world is against him. He's taken up trust in a guy called Ginjo, who is very clearly untrustworthy, but Ginjo is trying to turn Ichigo against Kisuke. We get some early indication that Karin is going to become a Shinigami to fill the void that her brother has left, and Urahara is helping her out there, but Ginjo is making Ichigo distrust Urahara. And Urahara is working with Isshin, and we get a fantastic chapter called Spotlight Brocken, where Ichigo is kind of like, he's watching Kisuke and Isshin from afar. That's basically the entire chapter, and he's deliberating in his head whether to confront Urahara, or, you know, because he doesn't know what Kisuke will do. And I find that to be fascinating, because Kubo's done a really good job up until this point of, yes, Kisuke is on the side of good, But as I said, at what cost? You know, what's really going on in this guy's head? But in my opinion, the Lost Agent arc does truly cement Kisuke as a good guy. He is the one who returns to Soul Society after his banishment to get Ichigo's powers back. He presents this idea to Yamamoto in front of all the captains. His exile is well and truly over, and he's been working in the shadows to create this sword to help Ichigo out. So the Lost Agent arc is kind of annoying in a sense because there are some major plot holes in that if Ichigo had just if Kisuke had just reached out to Ichigo, none of this would have happened. But regardless, Kisuke helps him out in his biggest time of need and gets his powers back. So I really liked that, and it does cement Kisuke as a true blue good guy for the rest of the series. And then we get the final arc, the 1,000 Year Blood War. As I said before, Kisuke is pushed to the forefront in this arc, which I actually really liked. He's in it from pretty much start to finish. There are no massive Kisuke-less gaps in the story like there are in the Urahara arc. But his actual importance has kind of been toned down a little bit. He plays this role of like war consultant almost, like helping out the Shinigami the whole way through, giving them intel on the Quincy's, obviously producing the Shinne-Yaku pills to get their Bankais back and stuff like that. He also helps Ichigo with his trips to the Royal Realm and to Wakemundo and stuff like that. And I really like the active role he plays in the final arc. And then he finally gets his hands dirty and fights Askin at the very end, uses his Bankai for the first time. And then he's just kind of written out, and the ending is kind of disappointing. You might not remember, but the end of Kisuke's story comes in chapter 666, where he's been heavily poisoned by Askin. And the last time you see this major character, he is lying face down in a pool of his own blood. He could be dead, for all we know. If you hadn't read Can't Fear Your Own World, you'd have absolutely no idea on the status of this incredibly important character, and I always hated that. I hated that Kubo, in the epilogue, couldn't find one panel to show the Urahara shop guys, because Yoruichi's in the exact same boat, and so is Grimjo. Like, I appreciate that you're probably just supposed to assume that Nell gets them out, but it's a visual story. I'd have liked to have just seen confirmation of their survival, but, you know, if you read Can't Fear Your Own World, they're all fine. But in terms of the actual manga drawn by Kubo, his ending is a big disappointment, for me anyway at least. It just leaves a weird taste in the mouth. Moving on to Kisuke's relationships then, and I think probably the most obvious one to talk about first of all is his relationship with Yoruichi. The two of them are almost inseparable, they're nearly always seen together. They are one of the strongest duos in Bleach, no question about it. They're very clearly supposed to be childhood friends. Whether there is any implied romance between these two characters, I've never really been too sure personally, because they're so close. You know, they're always sort of flirting. There's something going on there, maybe. But they're generally always fighting together. They're very, very powerful. I wish we'd seen more. You get to see Yoruichi absolutely wail on Yami, and then Urahara kind of steps in to help out a little bit as well. Obviously, the two of them team up with Isshin to fight Aizen, and then eventually the two of them fight Askin together as well. So it's actually really interesting when you think about it. You don't really see Kisuke fight on his own ever, apart from the couple of chapters you get in the Askin battle. And I remember a lot of people were a little unhappy with the way their relationship was portrayed in the Askin fight, because up until then they'd been very much equals, and that was kind of the whole point of their dynamic. But Kisuke kind of takes over in a bit of a weird way in that Askin fight. He forces her to transform against her will. She loses her mind in that fight as well. It's a little bit weird, I kind of get that, but for the most part in the series, I've always enjoyed their relationship a lot. Turn Back the Pendulum does a lot for it as well, showing how Yoruichi is willing to defy Soul Society just to save Kisuke when she knows he's in. She's willing to believe he's innocent without even knowing beforehand, and I always really liked that. I thought that was really good. And obviously you get to kind of see Tessai woven in a bit there as well. Considering the importance Tessai has with Kisuke, it's kind of weird they don't share more scenes together. And Tessai is basically written out of the series after the Urahara arc as well. I don't know if you noticed that, but he shows up, I think maybe he shows up in the Lost Agent arc. It could just be the anime. Oh no, he does. He shows up at the very beginning. He shows up when Karen is in the shop to buy some stuff. After that, I don't think you ever see him again. Very weird as well, because they definitely could have used his help in the final arc. But regardless, in regards to Kisuke and Yoruichi, their relationship goes back to when they were children. I know Kubo wanted to draw that. Specifically, he mentioned in an interview he wanted to draw that, but he never got the chance to. So All we know really is that Kisuke grew up in her mansion, joined her squad, and they've basically grown together from that point on. So definitely one of the best and most consistent relationships throughout Bleach, and really enjoyable. The next major relationship I want to get into is that with main villain Aizen, and the two of them share very similar personalities, and even though they don't share that much time on screen together, their opposite clashing worldviews are really kind of fascinating to see. So Kisuke, as I said before, is very much content with the status quo, ensuring the world remains the same no matter what. He's willing to do anything it takes to ensure that the Soul King keeps stability. Aizen, on the other hand, is a revolutionary. He doesn't like the world as it is. He hates the fact that the Soul King is this weird, inanimate being. He doesn't like that. He wants to change that, and he wants to sit on that heavenly throne. And that puts the two of them at real odds with each other, because despite the fact that they are the two smartest guys in the room, they want different things, and Aizen can't deal with the fact that Kisuke doesn't want the same thing as him, because he thinks they should be on the same plane. Aizen wants to control his own destiny in that he wants to be the person on top. He doesn't want anyone to be ruling him. He wants to know he is in charge. Kisuke controls his own destiny as well, but by making sure he's the power behind the throne. He doesn't matter to him who is in charge, as long as he knows that he can trust them and they're out for his own good. Essentially, that is the dichotomy between them. Aizen controls his own destiny through becoming the god. Kisuke controls his own destiny by controlling the power behind the throne. Like I said, that's the really interesting thing about them. There's more to it than that, though. We know Aizen has a bit of a god complex going on. We also know, however, that there's definitely a sort of inferiority complex there with him and Kisuke. Kisuke is the only person smarter than him in the entire series. That has to grate on you a little bit, especially when you're as egotistical as Aizen. We know that Aizen says that he came to the conclusion of Hogyoku before Kisuke. But Aizen's Hogyoku didn't work, so he had to steal Kisuke's and fuse them together. And you get this idea that Kisuke maybe created one that did work, since he was able to save the Vizards. And so Aizen's botched his. So Aizen takes Kisuke's, and there's a definite jealousy between the two. Aizen makes a big point out of the fact that Kisuke couldn't control the Hogyoku. He instantly tries to kill Kisuke the moment Kisuke shows up, pretty much. And there's real sour grapes between them, because Aizen wants to be the smartest, and he knows that he's not. And it's also, there are some really small little things that I think really showcase how Aizen actually feels about Urahara. So there's one point during their fight in Fate Karakura Town where Kisuke gets the upper hand on Aizen, and he says, too late. Like telling Aizen, you're too late, you've messed up. Later on, when Aizen appears behind Kisuke and Kisuke tries to counter, Aizen says, too late, in like a mocking way, and deals damage on Kisuke. So this is very unusual behaviour for Aizen, someone who sees himself as being above the competition. He really brings himself down to Kisuke's level because, there is that competition there. And like I said before, he says that Kisuke can't control the Hogyoku, but really Kisuke knows how to, possibly even better than Aizen does. And obviously they both want to use the Hogyoku for different means. Kisuke creates it. Even the creation of the Hogyoku is a really shady act, and I'm still not entirely sure how he knows how to do it, but he uses it to save his friends and hopefully stop the holification process. Aizen uses the Hogyoku to become a divine being. So really they are two sides of the same coin. If they were both on the same side, whoever was against them would be absolutely screwed. But Kisuke really is like the good guy version of Aizen. Essentially, they are very similar characters, and one of the most fascinating relationships in the series. Similarly is Kisuke's relationship with Miyuri Kurotsuchi, the captain of the 12th Division. Kisuke goes to the Maggot's Nest to get this guy out of prison in Turn Back the Pendulum arc. He's clearly very comfortable with dealing with someone as crazy as Miyuri, with someone who is very unpredictable, but then so is Kisuke. And when you get characters like Miyuri telling Kisuke that they are unpleasant, you know that this guy has some darkness in him, and I always really liked that. Kisuke knows how to deal with someone like Miyuri, where a lot of people might not. Obviously, Hiyori doesn't get how to deal with him at all, but Kisuke basically subtly says, I want to create the research institute, I want you by my side. If I were to die, it would all become yours, and that's obviously very speaking to Miyuri himself. But Miyuri has similar to what Aizen has, but to the next level, a very inferiority complex to Kisuke. He hates him, can't stand any mention of Kisuke because he knows that Kisuke is really, really clever, and Mayuri is always trying to find the next thing to outdo Kisuke with, and eventually in the Thousand Year Blood War arc you get the impression that maybe he's done that by creating Shinigami life. It's always interesting because I always felt it was a very unreciprocated relationship. Kisuke is basically using Mayuri a lot of the time. Mayuri is taking offense to Kisuke's intelligence, but they do come together in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, which I did enjoy. Mayuri doesn't like Kisuke, there's no getting around that, but they do work together to confirm their theory about the Quincy's and Hollow Reiatsu. They do work together to build the gate to the royal palace, and I just think that their relationship comes together really nicely in the end, and it's one of those subtler relationships that Kubo doesn't spend too much time on, but I really enjoy it when he does. The final relationship I want to talk about is that with his former vice captain, Hiyori Sarugaki. Like I said before, there's not a huge amount to go over here, but because they only really spend much time together in the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, but Hiyori doesn't like that Kisuke is basically a representative of the Gotei 13's mindset. This is played up in the Turn Back the Pendulum arc. She's horrified at the idea of the Maggot's Nest, but Kisuke sees it as a necessity. Then much later on in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, she doesn't like the fact that he has sent Ichigo and Yoruichi into the palace, but Kisuke thinks it's a necessity. So I think it's really interesting because Hiyori is very much against the establishment of Soul Society, whereas Kisuke is very much about upholding it. So seeing the two of them clash like that, I always found to be very interesting. In terms of Kisuke's fights, he really doesn't get a lot of them, and it's a big shame because Benihime is definitely one of the coolest Zanpakuto in the series. Kisuke makes use of a lot of Kido in his battles. He uses things like Senju Koten Taiho, which is a level 90s hardo. He uses a lot of Bakudo against Aizen, stuff like Sajo Sabaku and Rikujokuro he uses against Aizen as well. He can use them all pretty much without incantation as well, so he's clearly incredibly skilled in that department. He also makes good use of his own inventions in battles as well. He uses his inflatable Gigai, and like I mentioned before, the Shinei Yaku pills that he uses to help the captains get their Bankai back. In terms of his actual fights though, like I said, it's nearly non-existent. He skirmishes with Ichigo at the start where you get to see Benihime. Benihime's abilities are pretty unquantifiable. In the early parts of the Arrancar arc, he uses one ability to nullify Yami's Bala. Never really explained how he does that. He says he only needs to see an attack once and it will never work on him again. He uses an energy blast against Wonder Weiss, but it's not really a proper fight. Kisuke's first real battle comes against Aizen at the finale of the Fate Karakura Town arc, and you get to see him utilise everything in his arsenal, really. He does the inflatable Gigai, he uses loads of Kido, he uses a couple of tricky inventions of his, which I liked as well, like the Ryatsu sealing bands and stuff like that, but obviously nothing works until finally his Kido kicks in later on. I would argue his only real battle outside of the Aizen fight comes with his fight against Askin right at the end of the series, and he does obviously come and help Yoruichi to begin with. He fights alongside her, but really it's mostly her fighting. It's only when she goes down from the poisoning and Askin enters his holy form that Kisuke really gets to let loose, and he finally gets to see his Bankai, Kanon Biraki Benihime Aratame at work. And it's a really cool fight that God, I just wish was so much longer. It's 3 chapters, I think, at that, and it's such a shame that Kubo cuts that one so short, because Kisuke is so cool to see fighting properly. I don't think he ever uses his Shikai in the final arc at all. He basically goes straight to Bankai when he's fighting Askin, but regardless, it's still a cool battle. I just wish we'd gotten so much more of it. And that's pretty much it about Kisuke Urahara, guys. Bleach's most mysterious and enigmatic character, boiled down into a roughly half an hour analysis video. I've probably missed some stuff about this, guys, so please let me know in the comments below if I have, and what you thought about this video and this new series on the channel as a whole. As I said, Kisuke is one of my favourite characters in the series. He's very, very interesting. I love his worldview. I love the mystery surrounding his agenda, and then you find out that basically he's willing to sacrifice people to keep the status quo, in effect, all while trying to be a good person and a good friend as well. There's a lot of darkness beneath that goofy exterior, and I always really enjoy that in characters. I think Kyoraku does it really well as well. But like I said, Kisuke is the progenitor of that character type in Bleach, and I find him to be very fascinating. Let me know, guys, what you think about Kisuke, and as always, if you haven't before, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this coming out every week. But until next time, guys, I think that's pretty much it, and I'll see you then. Goodbye.